This is the PA Startup Podcast, episode number 5. This is the PA Startup Podcast, where we help pre-PA students, current PA students, and new grads start their careers as physician assistants. I'm your host, Chris Darst. We are glad you're here. Welcome to episode number 5 of the PA Startup Podcast. This is our first Q&A episode, and so I thank all of you who sent questions in. I just picked a handful of them to get started. So if yours isn't featured, no worries. I'm keeping track of them. If you want to ask it again, you can sure send me another email, questions@pastartup.co. Keep at it. If I don't feature it on here, it doesn't mean it's a bad question. Some of them were very similar. So I picked a couple of the top ones and we'll go through them here today. All right. So let's just jump right in here. Okay. We got an email from Brett, and Brett says, "Hey Chris, I applied to 4 schools and was accepted to 3 of them. 2 are local where I have parents and friends along with some connections, but the third is a very highly regarded program. I'm deciding between a fancier name and a bigger price tag versus a good solid school with a much lower amount of debt after graduation. How do I decide?" Well, Brett, that is an excellent question. Congratulations, first of all. So to apply to 4 schools and be accepted by 3 is a big deal. So way to go. Good on you. You must have done something right. So good work. PA school in general is very competitive. And so if you are accepted to a program and you graduate from a program, the influence that the name of your, that's on your degree is less so for PAs than, say, maybe med schools or other jobs. Like if you're in business school, then, a Harvard MBA is going to be a bigger deal than, some small private school. All in all, Brett, I'm going to tell you, I would go with the place where you've got the support, to be honest with you. Only because support is so important during school. If you have to move to a different place, you've got to pay rent, which is incurring more expense. You don't have friends and family nearby when you've got to kind of relax and unwind. You don't have that built in already. You don't have kind of the usual places to hang out or at least some understanding of the area. Now, it's exciting to go to a new place, and don't get me wrong, it would be super fun, but at the end of the day, you're there to get a degree, and you're going to be studying quite a bit. So even if you live in the most exciting place, you're not going to really be able to enjoy all of it that much. What I would encourage you to do is actually go to the cheaper program that has the built-in support system, because it gives you lower debt. It makes PA school maybe a little bit more tolerable, more enjoyable because of that support system. And then when you're done, because of the lower debt, you're going to be able to pay that debt off sooner, potentially have more money to use because your debt isn't as high, and you can travel to those amazing places that have a lot to do and enjoy them. But if you just go, for school, I wanted to do the same thing. I wanted to, I'm from Nebraska, very flat here. There's not a lot to do in Nebraska, but I wanted to be in the mountains. I wanted to go rock climbing and skiing and all those things. And I thought, man, I'm going to apply to school out in Denver. That'll be great. But here's the deal. I had no money during school and really didn't have a lot of time to go do those activities. But now that I'm out working and stuff like that, I can take my family to the mountains and we can have a great time. So I didn't really miss out on anything. I would go with the lower debt, the lower bill, and not worry so much about the name that's on the degree. I think the biggest thing that you're going to have in your favor is, if you got accepted to 3 programs out of the 4 that you applied to, you must interview well. You must be good at interpersonal communications. And so your best asset is going to be at your interview. It doesn't matter what name's on the degree. If I've got someone that's really cool to talk to, that can carry a conversation, that is laid back, that is motivated and stuff like that, that trumps the name on a piece of paper. So every place that you could potentially go to school is going to be accredited, and their name, it's going to be a valuable degree regardless of where you graduate from. So aside from maybe some really competitive positions on the coast or a position within a teaching institution where they might put favor on people that graduated from their program, aside from that, go with the lower bill, go with the built-in support system, and save yourself some money. All right. Thank you, Brett. That was a great question. I appreciate your time. Shoot me an email and let me know what your decision was. And I've been more than happy to talk with you further. And I'm just excited to see what you decide. Okay, moving on, we've got Emma who says, it doesn't look like I got into school this year. I applied to 3 schools and was rejected from all of them. I did kind of rush my application, but my grades are pretty good. What do I do now? Is it silly to apply again at the same places next year? All right, Emma, hey, this happens to a lot of people. So number one, do not get down on yourself. It is not the end of the world that you didn't get in. A lot of people get rejected. I read somewhere, and I don't have the stats in front of me, but PA school is more competitive than med school because of fewer programs. There's fewer seats available, and just as many people are applying to PA school than they are med school. So from a numbers perspective, PA school is extremely competitive because of scarcity. There's just not as many seats out there. So don't sweat it. Not a big deal. It's actually very common. So what she doesn't say in here is whether or not she got an interview, and that does kind of factor in. If she didn't get an interview, so Emma, I need a little bit more clarification. If you can email me back and let me know. But for the time being, if you got an interview and didn't get in, it might have something to do with how you interview. You might have been nervous. You might have stumbled a little bit. You might not have been confident. And unfortunately, that just comes from practice. So you have, if you had 3 interviews at all 3 schools that gave you great practice, you kind of know what you're getting into. So next year you'll be ready. You can even have some friends ask you for some questions. You can Google PA school application questions or interview questions. There's some great resources out there, and have some friends ask you and just kind of go through. And you don't want to rehearse it to the point where you're like, you memorize the answer and you're like a little robot who's going through the answer, but you want to practice it enough that when you're in the situation, you can kind of call on the stuff that you practiced. Okay. Does that make sense? Now, if you didn't get an interview at these places, then I would say it has more to do with grades and your personal essay. I know that stinks. You said your grades are pretty good, so I'm assuming that the GPA is kind of where it needs to be. Obviously, if you have some gaps in your grades that weren't great, maybe you need to go back and retake those classes. I know that stinks, but if you need to bring a C up to an A or a B, do that. Definitely worth your time. If your grades are actually pretty good and your GPA is where it needs to be, then I would honestly say it probably falls on your essay. And the essay is a big deal. And I wrote a workbook about essays. If you're having trouble writing one, or you've written one and it just maybe didn't go over so well, the workbook will really help you. I've got 10 tips to writing a PA school application essay that might be helpful for you. I will link that to pastartup.co/guides, GUIDES. It'll be right there on the front page. It's a quick tip sheet that kind of talks about the 10 tips for writing your essay. We also have a full workbook that has questions and room to write answers to. That I will link that on the guide page as well. But that can help you craft a better essay. And here's the deal. If your grades are good and, the application, all the pieces are where they need to be and your application is actually complete, the only thing that separates you from everyone else who's applying is that essay. And I view the essay as kind of the first step of your interview. It gives personality. It kind of explains things. It explains who you are and why you're different than every other applicant out there. So I would honestly say if your grades are good and you didn't get an interview, it's probably your application essay. If you did get an interview, then those things were all probably pretty good. It might just be your interview style. So don't sweat it though. These are all things that can be fixed. You can rewrite your essay to include not getting in. I mean, just be straight up with them and be like, hey, I didn't get in last year and it crushed me, but here's what I learned through the process. And it solidified the fact that I want to be a PA. It made me really examine myself and find out, was this the right path for me? And you know what? It was. So you can use that to your advantage. To answer your question, is it silly to apply again at the same places the next year? Absolutely not. A lot of places want to know that you're committed. Sometimes PA schools get applicants who wanted to go to med school that didn't get in. And so PA is a fallback plan. And we don't want a community of people that kind of gave up on their dream and just settled for something different. I want my PA colleagues to be people that chose PA school on purpose. So sometimes if you don't get in, it might be because they're worried maybe that you actually want to be a doctor and that the PA profession is not right for you. Sometimes it's because they're worried about something that doesn't fit with the PA profession. So you need to come back at them the next year and be like, look, this is for me. If I wasn't committed to this, I wouldn't do it 2 years in a row. I certainly wouldn't do it the same place 2 years in a row. So I'm committed. This is what I want to do. This is why I want to do it. And this is how I know. And I've had an extra year to think about it, and it's only encouraged me. If you go into all those details, my goodness, I think you're a shoe-in for next year. So don't sweat it. Beef up the grades if you need to. Take a look at that essay. You can check out our resources at pastartup.co/guides to help you with that. But you know what? Just put it behind you. Kind of focus on the grades and things. Get some more patient care experience. Work on your interview techniques, and give it another shot next year, Emma. I think you'll do great. Looking forward to hearing from you. So keep me posted. Let me know how it goes. All right, Allison, and I got everyone else's email, but Allison, if you're out there, I did not get your email. I had a little glitch with the website. Everyone whose questions I'm reading on the podcast are going to get a PA Startup Podcast sticker, but I need to know where to send it. So I have emails for Brett and Emma, but I don't for Allison. So Allison, I apologize for that. If you could shoot me another email at questions@pastartup.co, then I'll know how to get a hold of you. So she says, I'm a current PA student who's getting ready to go out onto rotations. My question is about preceptors who like to, quote, pimp their students for knowledge. If the student's not 100% sure the answer, should they say, I don't know, or answer what they think and risk looking like an idiot? Thanks in advance. Allison, this is a great question, so thank you for asking it. Yes, there are a lot of preceptors out there who like to pimp students. Personally, I hate that tactic. I will ask questions like, hey, tell me about this, or, what do you think about this? But people who do the old school pimping of medical knowledge, they're looking for you to fail. Now, here's the deal. You actually do remember things a lot better when it's in that environment. So that I know that totally stinks, but it has its value and it has its worth. I personally don't agree with it. I don't like it, but people still do it. So yes, you have to get used to it. So my answer to this is I would give it a shot. Typically what happens is there will be a series of questions, and each one will get harder as it goes. So if you say, I don't know on the first one, that sends the wrong message about you. And it might, you might not be for sure, but take a shot. Have some confidence and be like, I'm going to give it a whirl. And guess what? If they're doing it appropriately, they're pimping appropriately, they'll take whatever your wrong answer is and they'll build on it. They'll explain why it's wrong and they'll explain what's right. They shouldn't ever make you feel dumb for your answer. So you said risk looking like an idiot. They really shouldn't. I had one preceptor who we were in surgery and he said, what are the 3 layers of an artery? And I was like, oh, easy. The intima, the media, and then I blanked. And I was like, oh, I can't remember. And I was like, the externa? And he giggled a little bit and he's like, no, it's actually the adventitia. He said, adventitia is the outside. And, of course I knew it. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. But he didn't make me feel bad. But guess what? I have never forgotten that. So it has its role in education, but I would say definitely give it a shot. If you have some idea of what it could be, take a shot at it. Don't say, I don't know right away, but eventually they will get you to the point where you might have to say, I don't know, as the questions get further and further. One of my coworkers, we were just talking about pimping. He had said, let's see, how did it start? Well, he was in surgery and they started talking about the procedure and he had read up on it the night before. And so he's answering all these questions about, let's say, a gallbladder. And, why do we do it? And what is this structure called? And what is this? And what is this? And finally, the surgeon was like, what frequency does the bovie operate on? Like the electrocautery. And he's like, I don't know. And he's like, look it up and get back to me. Well, honestly, I don't know if he knew what the frequency that the bovie operated on was, but it's just, it's kind of a silly question. The goal was just to get him stumped. And he handled it like a champ. He's never forgotten that story. And I actually don't know what frequency the bovie operates on, but sometimes people just push you until you say, I don't know. So, but give it a shot, see how you do. And I guarantee if you're in the situation, number one, they've had students before that didn't know things, and so you're not going to be the worst. I guarantee you that. And secondly, you're not going to forget whatever it is that they're pimping you on. So just take it with a grain of salt, take it with some stride, and just know that it's kind of part of the game. So good job. Hang in there. Let me know if you get pimped. So shoot me that email and send me your email so I can send you that sticker. All right, last question here for the day. We've got one from Victor. He says, I was just offered a job after graduation, and everything was great until the salary negotiation. I don't feel like I have a lot to bargain with as a new grad, so how do I not accept their initial offer? I'm not wanting to go crazy high with salary, but their initial offer was a little low. Thanks. All right, Victor, this stinks, man, because you don't feel like you have a lot to bargain with. You don't have any tried and true experience. You haven't proven yourself as a PA yet. So how do you come back from, say, something below average from salary? So we just talked about this in episode 4. So if you haven't listened to that, refer back to that. We talk a little bit about this, but here's what I would do. I would have an idea of what the salary should be, and it sounds like you do because you know that the offer is a little bit low. Make sure that it's low. So a lot of people will, in their mind, they'll know what the national average is for a job, but you won't know what the regional average is. And unfortunately, the regional averages sometimes can be lower than the national average. So make sure that you know what you're talking about first. And then what I would do is I would decide what's most important. If it's wildly low, don't accept it. Keep looking for a job. If it's just marginally low, what I would do is I would say, okay, I would come back with something. And if they stick with their original offer, and without knowing numbers, it's hard to give you an example, but I would come back with some kind of number. And if they stick to that low offer that you know for a fact is low, I would point that out and say, the regional average is XYZ. And the AAPA has a lot of good resources for the salary profiles and things. And then specialty PA societies will also have a salary report. So look into those. But here's the deal. This is a little trick that seems to work pretty well. What I would say is if you've kind of ended the negotiation and they're sticking with that original salary and you want the job with, everything else is great, but the salary is not so great. What I would do is this. I would say, okay, I will accept that with the contingency or the understanding that after I've been here a year and I've exceeded all your expectations, that we can revisit the salary and we can renegotiate. And I could be eligible for a one-time raise. So let me just use general numbers. This isn't based on anything, but let's say the regional average is $83,000, okay? And they offer you $78,000. And you say, well, regional average is 83. I was hoping for 83. And they say, nope, we're sticking with 78. I would say, okay, how about 80? And if they say, nope, 78 is where we're going to stick. I'd say, okay, I tell you what, I'll do 80. I'm sorry, I'd say I'll do 78 with the understanding that after a year, we can sit down and renegotiate salary. And I would be eligible for a, 8 to 10% raise. So if you want 83 and you start at 78, say, okay, then I want to come back in a year after I've proven that I can do this and that I can check all the boxes, that I'm going to be an excellent asset to your team, but then I would be eligible for a $6,000 raise. So you're actually ending up ahead, because if their original offer was 78 and you wanted 83, instead of going for a $5,000 raise, say, well, I want a $6,000 raise. So then I'll actually be at 84 after a year, which would be where you would be if you started at 83 and then got like a normal cost of living type raise. So does that make sense, Victor? I hope it does. If the job otherwise is perfect and the salary is just not great, I would try to get it in writing that you can renegotiate a one-time bump in pay, and then after that, you'll probably just get cost of living. But negotiate that 1 year kind of annual review type thing where you can sit down and talk about it a little bit further. If they don't go for that, or if they're like, nope, we're going with 78 and cost of living is all we've got after that, you might want to keep looking, because ideally you want to work for some place that is, number one, flexible. Number two, is willing to negotiate. This isn't an entry-level job. A PA job right out of school is not an entry-level job. It is a profession. It is a career. So they really need to be coming at you with at least a spirit of, hey, we need to get Victor here. He's going to be a great fit for our program. I mean, if they've gotten to the point where they've given you an offer, then they like you. So they need to be like, okay, what do we need to do to get Victor here? Now, it might not be wild. They might not say 83, which is the national average, especially if the regional average is a little bit lower. But they at least need to come up $1,000 or $2,000 and say, okay, how about we meet in the middle? You want 83, we're giving you 78. Let's meet at 80. So if they haven't shown any of that, maybe think it through. But if you've exhausted all other options, then say, okay, tell you what, let's sit down next year. We'll talk about a one-time bump in pay to get me to where I need to be after I've proven myself, and then go from there. All right. So, well, thank you. We've got Brett, Emma, Allison, and Victor. Thank you for your questions. If you haven't yet subscribed to the podcast, head to iTunes and click subscribe. Of course, leave a rating and review as well. And I will also send you a sticker. But yeah, head over to our website, pastartup.co. We've got a lot of resources. That tip sheet for the essay is pastartup.co/guides, GUIDES. And then the 10 tips to writing your essays on there, as well as our ebook workbook that's available for purchase. But yeah, thanks so much for listening. We've got episode 6 coming up soon, so tune in for that. And I just thank you so much for your time. Best of luck to everybody out there, and keep grinding away. All right, take care, guys.
Dad.
Yeah, Paisley.
I think the Wi-Fi is not working, and I really need to look at my snaps, so can you fix it?
Oh, your Snapchat's not working?
Yeah.
And that's a problem?
Yeah.
How big of a problem?
Like, really big, like urgent.
It's urgent. All right, I'm going to go work on the Wi-Fi and the Snapchat. I will be right back.